ladies and gentlemen, my name is Master G. You are welcome to another online class. But this time, it is a practical class based on the last classes we had. Remember, we did cell and its environment. And under the cell and its environment, we treated diffusion, osmosis, plasmolysis, turgidity, hemolysis, I think crenation, and so on and so forth. But this time, we are taking a practical class on osmosis. The question can be of two types. If they ask us to demonstrate osmosis using a non-living tissue, that is what we are treating today. That is, we are going to use our semi-permeable membrane. We use a cellophane paper rather than maybe purple or this. But if they ask us to demonstrate osmosis using a living tissue, this is where we are going to get purple, or we are going to get a yam or potato. We dig into it. Maybe in our next class, that is what we are going to do. So in this case now, for the purpose of today, we are demonstrating osmosis using a non-living tissue. And in this case, what are the apparatus? The apparatuses are, we are going to get a burette, we'll get a clamp, we'll get a retort stand. Like I said, we'll get a cellophane paper, and we'll get a band to tie the mouth of the burette. And then we'll get a beaker, we'll get salt and distilled water. So what we did was that we filled the burette with distilled water. And then, don't forget, first of all, before you start pouring water into the beaker, we are going to use our cellophane paper to tie the other end of the burette so that the water does not leak out. Once we make sure that this is properly tied, then we pour distilled water into the burette, and into the beaker, we will fill it, we will pour water and salt, that is to make salt solution. Then the next thing to do is to mark the volume of distilled water. It is recorded somewhere. We'll mark the volume of the salt solution in the beaker. We'll also record that somewhere and leave this experimental setup undisturbed for about 6 to 12 hours. After about 6 to 12 hours, we'll come back to check what is our observation. The observation in this case would be that the water inside the burette, that distilled water, would have dropped, whereas the amount of salt solution would have increased. It would have increased in volume. There, we will now conclude that water molecules are moved from a region where water is in higher concentration inside the burette to a region of lower concentration inside the beaker. And our semi-permeable, again, like I said again, in this case is our cellophane paper. That is how to demonstrate osmosis using a non-living tissue. Again, let me just take a recap of all the things I've said. I said if you're asked to demonstrate osmosis using a living tissue, we can use our yam tuber, we can use our potato, or we use purple. But if you are asked to demonstrate osmosis using a non-living tissue, in this case, even though we are going to use the same experimental setup, but the difference will now be we are going to use purple in this case, or we use yam tuber or potato in this case. So that will be the next thing we are going to discuss in our subsequent class. But in this case now, a non-living tissue, we are going to get a burette, we'll get a funnel, we are going to get a clamp, we'll get our retort stand, and then a beaker, salt is as a solute, and then cellophane paper. So what we'll do is that we use the cellophane paper to tie the other end of the burette, and we pour distilled water into the beaker, into the burette, sorry, and mark the volume of the distilled water. Inside the beaker, we are going to mix strong salt solution. It serves as our hypertonic solution, while the water inside the burette becomes our hypotonic solution. And then we keep this experimental setup for some hours, having marked the volume of the distilled water inside the burette and the volume of strong salt solution inside the beaker. We take note of these two and leave the setup for about 6 to 12 hours. After about 12 hours, by the time we come back to check, we will observe that the volume of water, distilled water, inside the burette would have dropped, whereas the volume of salt solution inside the beaker would have risen. Then we then conclude to say that the water molecules has moved from a region where water is in higher concentration to a region where water is in lower concentration through a selectively permeable membrane. Our selectively permeable membrane here becomes the salt solution. Becomes the cellophane paper with which we have tied the mouth of the burette. What am I saying in essence? If this is our experimental setup, this is our beaker filled with salt solution, filled with salt solution. This is our beaker. This is our retort stand. And this is our clamp. This clamp is used to hold the burettes. It holds the burettes in place. And then at the other hand, the open end of the burette, we tie it with cellophane paper and allow it to be lowered down. But this time, inside this place is filled with distilled water. We fill this place with distilled water. So we mark this place where the water was initially. We mark it as, for instance, XO, and mark the volume of this, where this strong salt solution, we can mark it as YO. After about 12 to 6 hours, by the time we come back to check the volume, we would have discovered that this one would have dropped to X1, while this one would have risen to Y1. Then we conclude, like I said before, that water molecules has moved from a region where water is in higher concentration inside the burette to a region where water is in lower concentration inside the beaker, inside the strong salt solution, through a selectivity. The selective permeable membrane now is our cellophane paper, because we are asked to use a non-living tissue. Some other time, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to come together again where we will demonstrate osmosis using a living tissue. This time we use cassava, we use pawpaw, we can use yam, we can use our potato tubers. These are the materials we use for non-living, for living tissue. Thank you very much. Once again, you can join us at Sabo Junction. Don't forget, our numbers are 080-8488-1736. Once again, 080-8488-1736. The second one is 080-60-322-508. Both on WhatsApp and direct call. All these numbers are available. Thank you very much. I'll see you on the other side.